Oh, good day. Paul Lyons here from paintings.nz, and I'm going to have a go at the pathway. Well, there's a very small amount of pathway actually in the picture. I'll draw the outline of that now. It's just around about that section of the picture, and there's a bit of a stream, and this is the Hooker Valley, which is one of the things that I've drawn various or painted various aspects of at various times, and it's misty, and there's a cloud formation that sort of forms above the valley, so there's cloud over the hills on the left hand side and cloud over the mountains on the right hand side, and just a little bit of blue peeking through at the top there. And it's fairly high contrast. The original painting, the original photograph that I've got here. Photographs tend to mess up the contrast in things, so you can't really rely on them. But we'll take it as gospel, I suppose. One thing you can do is to turn up the turn down the contrast if you've got the picture displayed on a computer monitor, which is the way I display my reference photographs. Or you can change the lights and darks, but I'm not here. Well, doesn't really help a great deal with this particular photograph. Perhaps I should put it that way. All right. So as I said, there's a little bit of blue, not very intense, up in the top right hand corner. So we'll do that, and I've been messing around with a tube of neutral tint, trying to get the last few drops out of it because I was running low. So I've got some neutral tint on some brushes that I was using to facilitate that process, as it were. So I can just deploy that paint, otherwise it's just going to go down the drain when I wash the brushes. So we might as well make some use of it. Alright, so there's our sky. That's not very complex. As I say, there's dark in the left hand side coming over the nearby hills. Pretty hefty hills, but they're not as big as Mount Cook, Aoraki. And then there's also some rocks. So the hills on the left hand side have some snow at the top, and rocks. On this particular day, at any rate, this particular time of the year, which was summer, the rocks go about 3/4 of the way up the hills. So what I want now is for the water to be just sufficiently dry so that I can start painting in these hills and get a feeling that there's mist coming down. So I want the paint to spread, and that's probably spreading more than I want it. Yeah, it's still very wet. And also, there's a lot of paint on the brush, rather more than I imagined. So I'll just put a bit of water there to dilute it, and it's still fairly dark. So dilute it a bit more, and well, there's a dark section right underneath this, so it doesn't really matter if the colour goes down below. What I'm trying to do is just to get a misty feel that the colour is disappearing into the clouds, that they're covering over the rocks. So it's just a little bit more movement of the paint happening than I really want. Although maybe as I come back and do a bit more, add a bit more pigment lower down the hills, I might just manage to get this to work. But at the moment, what we've got is pigment sort of creeping up into the clouds, which doesn't really look like rocks behind mist, which is the effect that rocks covered in mist, hidden by mist, the effect that I'm after. And I'm also aware that I want to do some of the rocks on the other side as well. There's more hills over on the left hand side that also need to be painted before the... Actually, I wonder if I lower my knees so that the water is draining away from this edge of the wet area. Might be able to produce the effect that I want, always provided I don't end up spilling a whole bunch of paint all over the lounge carpet. So I want the darkest colours to be towards the bottom, where the mist hasn't reached. So let's put in fairly strong darks in this area, and there's some vegetation in some of these hills, so let's not make it completely dark. Yeah, we're still getting a lot of movement of the paint upwards, so I might just start doing some of this area down below, which is really quite dark. And then the area around the path is also incredibly dark. And as I said, I think when I started this, the painting, the original photograph was very high contrast. So I mean, I can do all this in very dark colours, but it could end up just being very monochromatic and boring. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. I mean, the picture itself, the photograph, looks fairly intense, but well, I'm not sure that I want to draw, to paint a portrait of the photograph. But so add some rocks on the side of the path there. Rocks being characterised by surfaces that catch the light or don't catch the light. So the credit card scrape gives us the surfaces that catch the light. Put a bit of yellow in there to suggest some vegetation, but it hasn't had a lot of effect. Now, there is quite a lot of vegetation in some of these other regions, though, really quite strongly coloured. So let's add a lot of yellow to generate that feeling of strongly coloured vegetation, and we're cutting in around the stream at the moment. So I think I might just stay away from that mountainous area still for a bit longer. It's just behaving too damply. You just got to try and catch it at the right moment. So I'm trying to suggest tussocky sorts of area down here that have got light yellowy tops, and light yellowy tops and dark bases to the tussock, and try and do the same sort of thing over here. Light yellow tops disappeared off this particular piece of tussock. This one's still got it. Just letting the brush soak up some of that green there, which probably can't make much use of, I don't think. maybe feed it around various places. Now let's do a bit of rocking, as it were, on this side of the path as well. Probably should be going down rather than up to get the pigment towards the bottoms of the rocks. That'll do. And let's just get rid of those lumps of white, which are not doing us a lot of good, I don't think. So this mountainous area up here really isn't cooperating. Sometimes things dry faster than you expect, and sometimes they dry a whole lot slower. This is the latter case. Well, I don't dislike the effect that this is producing, but it's not what I was going for. You can't always get what you want, isn't it? Yeah. Bit of a song. I seem to hear Mick Jagger singing something along those lines. So it's not producing what's clearly snow. I've got Mick Jagger in my head now. You can't always get what you want. So this is still very... I don't know whether you can see the reflections there or not. But there's a whole lot of... There you go. There's a whole lot of water up in this region, which isn't allowing me to do quite what I'm after. I don't want to dry it, because it'll... well, drying is just a very binary affair. It's either wet or it's dry. And you can't stop it when you want it to be stopped. But let's just see if we can tease some edges into existence up here. So fairly solid dark paint towards the bottom. Less for that particular ridge because it's a bit further away. Squeeze a bit of paint out of the brush so it's not quite as dark. And we've got a nice, I'm going to put it over there, nice furry edge on the edge of the brush at the moment, which I hope I can use to suggest broken rocks and snow up in this region. And there's a sort of, I suppose it is actually a glacier. I'm going to say it's a sort of a glacier, but it probably is actually a glacier coming down there. So I want to try and harden up that edge to show that there's a ridge in front of the glacier, and then again towards the top of the ridge the snow starts to predominate, so we've got a bit of rock dominated region towards the bottom and a bit of snow, a bit more snow towards the top. So now we've got another ridge sort of coming up. I don't like that. I wonder if I can mystify it. That's not the usual meaning of the word, is it? So now it's just about the right dampness to pick up the paint. Not allow it to move too much, but nevertheless there's a feeling that the marks I'm making are diffusing just a bit into that cloudy, misty area. One of the claims that people make about watercolour is that because the medium that you're using to paint with is a water-based medium, that it's good for painting water, clouds, mist and so on. And the things that are going on in the natural environment where it's all wet, or where it's wet, are not the same things that are going on the surface of the painting. It's just a pious hope, really. These two things are going to work the same way. I mean, they do have some similarities, but they're not the same physical phenomena. The diffusion of water across the surface of a piece of paper and sinking into the surface of the paper. It's not the same as clouds diffusing over the tops of the hills. So using the edge of the brush to get imprecise and broken bits of paint. So we've got, actually it hasn't done too badly. I'm quite liking that, and I'm also quite liking this. And the one in the middle we don't need to stress about it, I guess. So we can get a slightly harder edge down there. There's various scree slopes in here that I'm not that I haven't painted in, but I might just try and indicate some of that by pulling out some of the paint. There. There. And coming down. And let's indicate a bit of structure in some of this region up here. We can just pick out some of the places where the paint above is already a little bit darker and emphasize that contrast. So we've got the row of vegetation along there with something above it that's darker. So in painting the darks here, I'm actually painting the top edge of this row of vegetation. So it just gives us something up there to catch the eye. We can do the same sort of thing down here. Oops, down here. Only perhaps not quite as emphatically as that, I don't know. I often de-emphasise things and then have a look at them later and think, I could have left that the way it was. So that gives some structure up to that mid-distance, and the tussock here is now forming some sort of reasonable structure. I might just try and do something on the edge of the stream to give it some definition, because of course the things that grow at the edges of the streams are not the same things that grow half a metre away, so you get a difference. I suppose that could be stream down there too, couldn't it? So we might just leave that as stream colour. Don't really need... maybe even that could indicate stream. Maybe not up this far though. That could just about be snow, I suppose. Up there. Just take away this edge, although it's a very hard edge in the actual scene between the vegetation on this series of hillocks and the hills behind. You don't have to follow the photograph exactly, but one of the things that caught my eye, I think, was the contrast there. So actually, speaking of the original scene had the stream going off in that direction more or less, and I thought I needed something to pull the eye over towards the gap in the hills, so I've flipped the stream around by contrast with the way it appeared in the original photograph. So let's do a bit of path laying. Maybe we'll put in a suggestion of vegetation on the edge of the path. It's just, there's not enough yellow and the pigment to do that very strongly. Never mind. That hasn't worked out very well. And now let's that's the sort of indeterminate lightish colour that I'm looking for the path. Now we also need something for the it's a bit dark. We also need something for the stream, of course. There's no point in having it just being a white reflection of a fairly dark sky. Because that will just look unnatural. So, see if we can produce. No, how wet is that? Still fairly wet around that area. It's too eye-catching up there. So let's what colour am I getting? Oh, it's getting very dark. It was going to be blue, but it's turned far darker because of the various other bits of pigment there are in the brush. Do I want to do that immediately, or do I want to put a bit of... I think I want to put a bit of water down, which I might be able to get away with doing with the water bottle. And tease a drop out of it. I don't know whether you can see that drop or not, but there's a single drop that I've added. And that's going in as blue. And then he puts it on and he takes it off. So we've got, and I'll put that blue in there as well, which is not going to help it to read as stream particularly, but it doesn't look like a make some bushes there. It doesn't look like a white reflection either. Now that stream has some rocks in it. It's alpine stream. Of course, it's got rocks. They get carried down whenever it floods. Oops. It's all too damp there at the moment, so let's dry it off a bit. And no, it's not going to help at all. So we're getting something of the same sort of effect by toweling out the darks. Oh, poo. Huh. Or maybe we're not getting the same sort of effect because the towel tends to pick up paint sort of differentially. You get a sort of texture from from the paint that if it's in the part of the painting where you expect to see rocks, you tend to read it as rocks. Getting towards a sort of, this is not needing a lot more doing to it, I don't think. If I had my druthers, I'd take the intensity of colour here down and pull the intensity of colour here up, because that's dragging our eye off to the wrong location. I sort of want us to go up in that direction. Mind you, I should probably do something to tone the path down a bit as well. Don't really want that to drag people's eyes off to the side. So let's put a bit of something in there just to knock it back. I was quite pleased with the way it looked, but there are larger issues. And again, put the paint in and towel it off a little bit, give us a bit of texture that suggests rocks. I reckon I should probably stop. At least let it dry and see how it's looking from a distance, and then come and tart it up if necessary, but I suspect that it may be ready for framing around about now. Don't go up into that cloudy area. It's just going to look like cloud coming down, isn't it? We want that to have that effect. Maybe try and emphasise the darks a bit further down. Well, as I said, I wanted them to be distinguished from these colours, but also I want there to be some difference in value in the hill. So I'm leaving a slightly lighter line there, which is very artificial, but might work if you don't look at it too closely. Just the merest hint of something up there. A bit more further down. It's all about timing in watercolour. Okay. So, having said it's all about timing, I will say it's now time to have a rest. So I'll let it dry and then get back to you. Tell you what I think. Okay then, I've had a wee look at this sitting at the other end of the room for 10 minutes or so, and I reckon it's a keeper. I don't think I want to mess with it anymore. Not all of it's exactly as I would like it to be. This dark area here is perhaps a little bit too dark, but we can live with that, and I don't quite like the way that the paint has crept into the white clouds there, but I think that trying to fix either of those things is not likely to be beneficial. So I think that the good aspects of this outweigh the bad. I quite like the general feeling of the hills and the mist, and down here, and the way that the painting leads in the right direction, and it just generally feels as though it's more or less coherent. So, thank you for staying with me, and we'll catch up with you next time. Good night.